Hello, my name is Kensaku Yoshida, and I will be teaching this course on the Introduction to Language Acquisition. This course will be conducted partly online using Zoom and partly on demand using the Moodle. It will be conducted basically in the following way. I will prepare a video for each topic, as well as some other reference materials related to each of the topics. You will be asked to watch the video and/or read the reference materials in your own free time before the online discussion and question and answer session. The online session will be held sometime during the fourth period each Tuesday. Your attendance will be checked as much as possible with your participation in the online session. And I will also assign short reaction papers, not necessarily after each class, and the deadline for each reaction paper will be within the day the class is held. The topic of the final paper will also be given to you via the Moodle, and you will be required to submit it on the Moodle by the deadline that I will set. The major purpose of this course is to get you to acquire a broad understanding of the theories and problems in first language acquisition. More specifically, I will try to cover the following topics. First of all, I will introduce you to different theories of first language acquisition. Then I will talk more specifically about the acquisition of sounds, then the acquisition of words and meanings, the acquisition of grammar, and the acquisition of pragmatics. Now, before we begin, a very fundamental question is, why would anybody want to study about language acquisition? There are many different reasons that people give, but here are three reasons that are often mentioned by most people. The first is language acquisition is considered as a window to learning about the nature of human beings. What is a human being? You've probably heard of at least one of these as being a definition of a human being. A human being is Homo sapiens, a being that can think and reason. The second one says a human being is a Homo ludens, which means a being that can play. And the last definition is the one that we are interested here, and that is that a human being is a being that can use language, Homo loquens. So in order to learn about the nature of human beings, many people want to look at how children acquire language. Why is it that we can use this very unique form of human communication? Now, this leads to the second reason. In other words, language acquisition process is considered as a way of learning about the nature of human communication, talking. Human beings communicate not only orally, but also, in many cases, not by everybody, but by using letters, reading and writing. And there are many different ways of communicating non-verbally as well. Human beings are able to combine all of these different processes in communicating with the people around them. The third major reason that people give, especially people who are in the process of teaching foreign languages, is this. Language acquisition process is considered as a hint to learning about second and foreign language learning and teaching. So many people tend to think that if we learn something about the way children acquire their native language, that this will help us to figure out how to teach second and foreign languages to adults who are already beyond the age of learning their first language. Now, I'd like you to watch a short video which shows the importance of language in the development of a child.
Of all mankind's inventions, none was more consequential than the birth of language. Before its creation, each person's knowledge was limited to what he or she experienced directly. Afterwards, someone who learned something could share it with anybody else. In this video, we'll look at 4 things known about language learning in general, and then listen to the story of Lucky Lucy and Poor Pete to understand the importance of language in everyday life. Our brain's foundation is built through experiences early in life. Pat Levitt, from the Center of the Developing Child at Harvard University, studied our brain development over the course of our life extensively. He showed how the brain's ability to change dramatically drops in the years of life, while the amount of effort such change requires increases. Another research showed that at age 5, 90% of a kid's brain has been formed. If during these years the child is blocked from receiving stimulating experiences, the language center and other parts of the brain are likely to remain weak for life. We learn language socially by observing and imitating others. Some 1,000 years ago, German Emperor Friedrich II wanted to prove the opposite and showed that we develop language naturally all by ourselves. He made his nannies raise some children. They were allowed to feed and clean them, but not to interact socially or ever speak a word. Not one child learned to speak, but instead, they all died. For the same reason, toddlers can't learn language via tape or technology. They need to be motivated through a human relationship. Then they pay attention and learn. Our language brain growth is strongest in year 1. If we study the brain's development by the rate of new synapse formation over the first 11 months of life and then the next 15 years, we can see how much the first 5 years matter. The growth in the part of the brain responsible for language peaks between birth and age 3. During this critical period, children can learn a new word every 90 minutes and several languages simultaneously. Our sensory pathways responsible for vision and hearing peak before, which makes sense because we need to see and hear to imitate language. 4-month-old infants, for example, if raised bilingual by a British mom and a Chinese dad, can already differentiate between 2 languages just by observing the lip movements of their caregivers. Higher cognitive function, such as logical reasoning, peaks only once we have the words and know the symbols to make sense of our world. Language makes our world. Rich language skills allow us to really listen, to speak well, to enjoy reading and master writing. They can create an entire world around us. As the German philosopher Wittgenstein said, "The limit of my language is the limit of my world." Let's take, for example, the word daycare center. Some people think of it as a preschool. The Irish call it play school, and the Germans invented the word kindergarten. Only if we know all 3 words can we understand what's possible. Now, let's listen to the story about Lucky Lucy and Poor Pete, 2 children raised in 2 very different ways. Lucy is raised by her mother. The mother is an average native English speaker who knows around 20,000 different words. Pete's parents hire a nice nanny from a foreign country. Instead of speaking in her native language, the nanny is told to talk to Peter only in English. While her everyday English seems okay, she actually knows only around 5,000 words, 1/4 of what Anne's mom knows. Year 1 is when the language brain is developing the strongest. If Lucy is awake, half of the time her mom speaks, she will hear around 10,000 words per day and maybe 2,500 being directed at her. Directed language is what matters. Whenever her mom connects a word with an actual experience, Lucy learns its meaning. Peter hears English only when the nanny deliberately speaks to him, around 1,000 words a day. But not only is quantity lower, but also the quality. As the nanny is not fluent, there is a chance that many words come across broken. At their first birthday, both kids can say mama and papa. What we don't see is that Lucy actually already knows many, many words, even though she can't say them. But Pete's language universe is more limited. When Lucy and her mom look at picture books, her mom points out what they see. A little monkey is also a gorilla, an ape, a clever animal which uses tools, climbs trees, and lives with his mama and papa in the rainforest of Africa. When Pete looks at a picture book, his learning is limited by the language of the nanny. The same monkey is just cute and eats bananas. To compensate, he's given a language app. But as Pete lacks the foundation, he doesn't understand a word. To him, it's just a bunch of new sounds strangely connected to colorful characters. On their second birthday, Lucy knows already well over 200 words, the amount where children start to learn rules and apply grammar. Pete knows less. Sometimes he gets frustrated because he can't express himself. Lucy likes to go with her mom into the park. Sometimes they watch the old men play chess. She doesn't understand the game, but knows that there are pawns, rooks, knights, a queen and a king, a bishop and a horse. One day she will learn the rules. It will be easy because she sees each figure clearly. Her understanding of their special skills is obvious. For a lack of language, Pete sees just a big checkered board and some wooden figures which all look quite the same: pawns, knights, bishops. To understand the rules later will be hard for Pete. All figures look so similar. How could they do different things? At their third birthday, both can say their own name and form sentences. Lucy's vocabulary now holds 1,500 words. Pete's got 500 to make sense of this world. In year 4, they enter kindergarten. When Pete stands in front of the big shelf, he sees different wooden blocks, the ball, some old toy, a horse, and the yellow digger. When Lucy stands in front of the same shelf, she sees circles, triangles, squares, a basketball, the red pinwheel, the beige rocking horse, and the carton box of the Lego Technique digger. At playtime, Lucy understands what others are talking about and often takes the lead by suggesting a new idea. Pete often doesn't understand what she means. If the group discusses something for longer, he zones out because he has trouble following the conversation. By the end of the year, Lucy knows 3,500 words, where Pete only knows 1,000 words. Lucy now forms more complicated sentences and perfect grammar. In the evening, her mom reads bedtime stories to her. Words she's missing, she learns out of context. As a native speaker, the mom can raise and lower her voice, making the stories exciting. Fairy tales become alive in her head, and Lucy learns to imagine and to think creatively. Pete still speaks in more simple sentences, and his grammar is not perfect. When his nanny reads to him, the voice is more monotone. It's more boring, and paying attention is more difficult. Words he's missing often remain missing. By the end of the year, Lucy knows 6,000, and Pete knows 2,000 words. To understand why the actual difference in language abilities between the two is even larger than it seems, let's imagine that words are nothing but tools that help us uncode the world, form thoughts, structure ideas, and then communicate with others. With 6,000 words compared to 2,000 words, Lucy's toolbox is now 3 times the size. Lucy has a huge head start as she is entering elementary school. Einstein, by the way, as a child, seldom spoke. One interesting anecdote goes like this. As he was a late talker and hardly spoke at the age of 7, his parents were worried and tried many things to get him to speak. At one point, they were afraid that he had learning disabilities. At last, at the dinner table one night, he broke his silence to say, "The soup is too hot." Greatly relieved, his parents asked why he had never said a word before. The young genius replied, "Because up until now, everything was in order." What are your thoughts about language learning? Can someone like Pete still catch up later in life? Or maybe find other good ways to express himself? Maybe our point of view is too narrow, and Pete and Lucy actually balance each other out with the different skills they have. Please share your thoughts in the comments below.
Okay, so what do you think? The video that you just saw is probably a little biased towards what we might call the social view of language acquisition, but it still says some very important things. That even if a human being, a baby, is born with the ability to acquire language, if that child is not exposed to an environment in which that language is spoken, the child will not acquire the language fully. But anyway, let's go on now to some of the references that I'll be using. Here you see 4 books which are given to you in red. The main text that I will be using is Clarke's First Language Acquisition. The others are for references, and Clarke, 2017, Language in Children, and towards the bottom, Saxton's Child Language Acquisition and Development are 2 books which I think are relatively easy to read. So you might want to refer to them if you are interested. Now here are the main books that I just mentioned. So this is the main text that I will be using. I will be taking materials from this book, not everything, but a lot of it. And these are the 2 books which are quite easy to read. If you are able to find them, that will be the best thing to do. Now there is also a very useful internet site where some of the basic concepts that I will be talking about are explained in a very simple manner. And it's called the Simply Psychology site. Now let me show you what it looks like. If you go to the URL, to the home page, it looks something like this. Okay, so it says Simply Psychology. And then when you see this towards the top, you see something called Theory. If you tap Theory, then you get a whole bunch of topics that are referred to. Now, some of the topics that I will be talking about, which are included here, are, for example, behaviorism. I will be talking about all of these issues. And also, I will be talking about Piaget, the cognitive psychologist, and also I will be talking about the theories of Lev Vygotsky. Now, aside from the Simply Psychology homepage that I just introduced, there are other very useful internet sites. I have listed some for the theories of language acquisition, also for the development of sounds, the development of words, the development of grammar, and the development of pragmatics, and finally, child-directed speech and language development. So these are the topics that I will be dealing with throughout this course. I hope that you understand the concepts. I will try to make it as easy as possible. I will try to provide you not only with written materials, but also with audio and visual materials as well. And hopefully, by the end of the course, you will be able to understand the importance of child language development. All right, so anyway, that's it for now, and I will see you again when we begin to talk about the theories of child language development.